Good morning again, and welcome to all of you. Thank you for bringing your hearts and minds to today's worship service. Have you understood all of this? There is no doubt that Jesus was a master storyteller. And if he was here in this day and age, he probably would have been a great social media influencer or even a skillful blogger. Today's gospel gives to us preachers a choice of stories or parables or allegories for the kingdom of heaven. I want to play today a little bit with the mustard seed. In fact, here's my share of mustard seeds. I think I showed you this in a past sermon. You can hardly see them, and they're so tiny. They're probably half the size of a grain of rice. But I find it amazing that Jesus, as a teacher, knew so much about science, about medicine. Today's example, he knows a lot about botanical stuff. With the mustard seed example, there are a couple of possibilities for us to consider. And I would like to call the mustard seed a case of mistaken identity. If you were all here with me now, and I really miss having you here, I would have asked for a show of hands to tell me which mustard plant did you think Jesus was talking about? So you can still do it. I will ask 2 questions, 3 maybe, and you can answer there on the text. Did you think Jesus was talking about the mustard plant, the greatest of shrubs, just if you want to put a P for plant there? Or did you think he was truly talking about the greatest of trees? So you could put T there for a tree. Or do you think he was talking about both possibilities? And that's where I am, that this is where my sermon is going to take you. This is important to understand. Why does Jesus compare the kingdom of heaven to a mustard seed? But he also, remember, he also talks about having faith like a mustard seed in other passages. Well, let's see. The mustard tree, so by now, what I'm going is that there is a mustard plant or bush or shrub, and there's a mustard tree. The tree can grow 20 or 30 feet tall. So for most of us, and I know it was true for me, I always thought that when he spoke about the mustard seed, it was about the tree, and that's a possibility. And that actually helps us imagine faith as something that can take us far along, way high, all around the universe. But there are other ideas that come to mind for me when I think about mustard. I think about hot dogs, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise. And I think that connecting that with the idea of faith would be a good place to start when we ponder this parable. Faith gives us the necessary basis or foundation that allows us to grasp a little bit the mystery of the kingdom of heaven. And when Jesus talks about a mustard seed, he talks about those 2 things. Today, kingdom of heaven. Other times, faith like a mustard seed. But if we think now about the mustard plant, different thing, the shrubs. Those are not trees, but they can grow beyond 5 feet, but mostly horizontally, although apparently they can also grow quite tall, but they are not trees. And Jesus said it was the greatest of shrubs. So this plant, this bush can grow, again, feet and feet, 20 feet, and it produces the spice that is the basis of the mustard that we put in our hot dogs and burgers. The tree is just one tree. The bushes are many bushes. So I think Jesus is very astute because he makes us stop and think with pictures when he uses parables. He's tapping into the right side of the brain, or the less dominant. So if you're depending lefty or right-handed, then it is the opposite side that is dominant. And that's because the nerves cross from one side to the other. But did you know that more than 700 million pounds of mustard are consumed worldwide this year? That is a lot of fruitfulness and productivity from just one seed. So I think that when Jesus was making us picture the strength and the power of faith, he was thinking, I believe, on both sides of the mustard equation: productivity, expansion. And if we think of hamburgers, somebody did the homework, and apparently there's a hamburger day, May 28th, and there are 50 billion, with a B, burgers that are consumed per year. And somebody said that it would be long enough to go around the world 32 times. So imagine how many of those billions of burgers have mustard in them. Hot dogs, 20 billion hot dogs a year. So that works to about 70 actually hot dogs per person per year. So you get the picture. The French fries, I'm not gonna count, but they say also that the average American eats around 30 pounds of French fries a year. So back to the parable. So a mustard seed not only grows very tall if it is the tree seed, or it can be one of the most productive harvested spices in the whole world, because that mustard that we consume comes from the spice that comes from those shrubs. And again, that is a beautiful picture of faith. And as Paul said today, we know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. So we may be on our way to become a tree, generous, wise, welcoming birds or other creatures into our space. Some of you may be studying or becoming more proficient at something, going from ignorance to wisdom. I think at the heart of this message about the kingdom of heaven is faith, because otherwise how could we believe about this kingdom that we just simply cannot see? And I think it's very inspirational to hear from Jesus that we can become anything we want. We can grow in whatever area of life God is placing us to a stature that is millions and millions of multiples of our original beat. But I would say that that is just one stage of our spiritual journey. And I'm interpreting the message of the mustard seed as development and transformation. Think about how we grow, how we mature, how we develop to a point when we can stand back and then look at our journey and say, we can see that it was good, just like when God created us. After growth is complete, it is time to share our wisdom, to build our legacy and give it back lovingly to the world. So I want to invite you to ask yourself some questions. What is your legacy? What is your magnum opus, your greatest work? Have you had time to stop and see that it was good, as God saw when he created us? The faith of the mustard seed, whether it is the plant or the tree, is all written in its genes, in its blueprint. And so it is with us. We were created in God's image, and that creation, that spark that is in us, comes with a very personal and unique journey. A spiritual genetic imprint that is very real and very specific to each of us. It is the most perfect protocol of development and growth for all of our lives. And each creature ever created has its own version of the mustard seed, because at the end of the day, every living creature has that same material that makes up their individual genetic makeup. So my last thought is to call your attention to how you interpret faith, or how we interpret it. Faith is not a blind process. It's not about closing our eyes and hoping for the best. If you think that a mustard seed has blind faith and is silent when it grows in majesty, I want to tell you, not so. Not so at all. Faith is not blind. It is a very specific and meticulous protocol for life that's given to us at creation. The blind part is that we may not see the workings of this miracle that we carry around. But we have that spark of the divine in us. All of us, all living creatures, have that spark. So we can grow, we can be productive, fruitful, we can offer our branches of wisdom to others. And let's remember that that wisdom that we grow, we can share from living our Christian life. That is the faith of the mustard seed. And if you haven't already, consider it. Take this message as an invitation to plant your seed, to nurture it, and harvest it, no matter how small. So tiny that I think there are a couple of thousands here in this little flask. No matter how small, let it grow, because your seed will reach immense heights, and then you can be part of spreading the good news of Jesus to everyone around you. May God bless you and keep you safe every day. Amen.